Hey, good day. This is Greg Lewis, City Manager of Lebanon, New Hampshire. And I want to welcome to Lebanon in Depth today. And today it should be Lebanon in Depth, Hanover in Depth, because this is our first show of the year. And I have asked my collaborative colleague from Hanover, our Hanover Town Manager, Julia Griffin, to join me on our show. And it's going to be kind of we're going to co-partner this show today. And we're just going to get together, and we are both happy about the new year.
We are.
And I think we should toast. Here's to Hanover, and here's to Lebanon. This, for those who do boss us and basically work for, this right. is a grape non-alcoholic sparkling grape juice. But that being said, I think we've talked a lot over our last year. Now we're really going to explore 2013.
Yeah. And
I guess we both had prepared for our show by looking over all that's laying ahead of us and laying away ahead of Hanover and Lebanon. And there's many areas in which we can look and work together and support one another in collaborative ways. And both of us are the type of managers who believe in collaborating with our neighbors and our colleagues and all the people that we work for, all the citizens of Hanover and Lebanon. All the time I see people from Lebanon traversing between to Hanover people traversing and traveling to Lebanon. So I think it's a wonderful connection between the two neighbors. And then we have other neighbors that we have been very lucky to be involved with across the river, right. In Norwich and Hartford, and then to our east we have our people in Enfield. So it's kind of it's really that's what I coming here. I enjoy the fact of this sense of the Upper Valley
as an extended community. You're right,
yes,
Greg. Yeah.
It's nice, and I don't know where to begin. I think you've posed a few questions we should probably begin with. I mean, we could really go many places, but where do you think we should start?
I mean, as I looked over the City of Lebanon work plan for the coming year, I was amazed at how much collaboration we're already doing, but what the potential is for additional collaboration.
Yes.
And from the town of Hanover standpoint, we work with your staff on so many levels every day. Whether it's your police and fire department staff, your public works department staff, water, wastewater staff, assessing staff, your IT folks, we're on a first name basis with your staff, and because we share such a long border.
It is a long one.
That's really joined by a couple of major state routes and a somewhat more incidental state route with Great Hollow Road. And a number of our employers have facilities in Lebanon as well, and we clearly contribute travelers to Lebanon coming through Hanover.
Travelers coming from Hanover through Lebanon, and vice versa.
Right.
I think people take in some of the amenities
that
Hanover has to offer, some special, unique features that it takes a place like Hanover to have those special, unique features, whether it's going to the Hopkins to go to some cultural event, which is delightful, or enjoying the Nugget Theater, the nonprofit-run theater there, and enjoying the film world, or just enjoying the athletic sports of the Dartmouth College. That's marvelous, and I see the Hanover people come down here and partake of our kind of unique little downtown areas. Our West Lebanon Village is really delightful, and then the downtown Lebanon area.
Yep.
But I think this traveling back and forth brings to the mind the transportation issues
Absolutely.
we face. And what are your thinking on some of the transportation issues that we face?
Over the years, Greg, we Hanover and Lebanon have talked extensively about the Route 120 corridor and what we can do to mitigate the impacts of growth and development through that corridor. We collaborate regularly with DOT, and in particular Alan Hanscom out of the District 2 offices, which are right at exit 16 for New Hampshire DOT. Alan is a great practical resource for our region. We work with our transit providers all the time, because in Hanover we're a transit system dependent community that loves the Dartmouth coach, that loves AT, that loves, the Dartmouth students, obviously, many of them depend on that transit to get to and fro. So we see the possibilities for what could happen in the Route 120 corridor to reduce the single occupancy vehicles and figure out kinder and gentler ways to get people through that corridor.
Yes.
And
yes.
reduce that sort of travel through to get to DHMC or to get to Etna Road, sort of work traffic. Lots of possibilities, and I think this latest sort of convening of staff to talk about, okay, what are some of the options that we should put on the table for future consideration that might be partnerships with developments that come forward in the future is
I
exciting.
think that's great, because all our staff members got together and had a good visit.
Right.
And they're constantly, as you said, they're interacting and they're having conversations with each other about these common projects and challenges, and they had recently once again got together, look at the situation that we're facing, and trying to reconcile and work with the situation that's there on the ground. It's kind of like the brutal facts of this whole thing is there,
right?
But the great opportunity is there if we can figure that out. How to like you said it best in the way you described. Trying to ease that burden that people experience when they travel on 120.
Right.
But do it in a way that's focused on the needs of the persons and the differing developments along there, and the overall greater community as well. To try to say, what can we do that we all can live with,
right? And
from our different vantage points in our different roles, we have to find that way. I know we looked at lots of things. The transit, I know, was looking at what more it can do. I think Advanced Transit works with Hanover and Lebanon, both works with us both well.
Yes.
And been very cooperative in trying to plan together. I know that our planning and zoning department has been working with Advanced Transit, helping brainstorm, where sites should be, where could they be, where are they, or is it working, is there something we could do a little different, can we tweak it here, what can we do? So I think the future's there. We just kind of have to figure this puzzle out. It's a puzzle.
Yeah, and we're lucky in that we've got a couple of I think really committed regional partners with the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission and Nate Miller, who's the transportation planner for the Regional Planning Commission, and also the Upper Valley Transportation Management Association, which a group of communities got together to form a number of years ago because we recognize that our transportation and sort of transit solutions are regional in nature. We can't afford to be doing them on our own.
Yes.
And so the regional resources are there. Clearly, sometimes funding is the predicament that we face in terms of how are we going to pay for these innovations, whether it's an additional couple of bus routes or enhanced shuttling or widening or narrowing or bicycle and pedestrian improvements, you name it. It's often a matter of money. But my sense is that when we work collaboratively, one, it's fun from my perspective working with your staff. And hopefully they feel the same about working with ours.
It's very reciprocal.
Yeah, and I think when you put us all together around a table, there's some good opportunities that come out of those conversations that we might not have thought of if we were trying to brainstorm as just Lebanon or just Hanover. And we're not going to be able to solve these issues as individual communities. It's a regional problem.
I agree completely. We're going to all have to work together. And we have to come up with some sort of unification idea about what we all can live with together.
Yep.
And I expect it'll have a big role for transit. I think in terms of the coach is really a wonderful thing. So here we have these assets: Advanced Transit, Dartmouth Coach, and then we have some other providers of transportation that could join into it. I know that in other places I've worked with this kind of networking of all the various players and trying to figure out what is the pieces, where should they go, how should these arrows be aligned so that we can reach a point where that the person has some options to go, that's flexible enough to adapt, that's timely enough to deliver where people need to be delivered.
Right.
And the major producers of traffic onto 120 and around there needs to be some sort of, I think, overall umbrelliness to capturing when people if institutionally we can change when people arrive
Right,
and leave.
the whole shift change issue,
Could
and
we, could we, is there possibilities that we could moderate
Yep.
the conflicting trafficking accessing? Then if there's other ways of people getting from one place to the other, is another way, another transportation will work. Some won't work for all people, but I think if we could offer a menu up.
I agree, and I think we've got some employers that are potentially large enough, so if they make a change, it actually creates a substantial impact on the traffic patterns that occur. And two, they have some of the means to corral their staff to talk about what shift change or sequence of events might change to reduce that. That I always think of it as as the python swallowing the mouse. We've got this large chunk of traffic that all arrives at the same time at exit 18 and in Hanover, on I-91 at the Norwich exit. And if we can mitigate those mice in the python and then sort of stretch out.
I think there's possibilities there. I do.
Yeah.
And I think that if so, and then for some persons it may be that we'll be able to have a way of them being able to use pedestrian pathways and bikes for some persons that they're in the area. So there may be possibilities of that. I know we got to work with the Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, which has some very important plans, some very significant plans
For expansion,
for expansion, and I know we want to work with them. So I think that's a real important piece. Sometimes I mention Highway 10 too, because I live in West Lebanon.
I know. So you get that traffic.
So I get that traffic out of there, and then with the development of River Park, and then Iron Horse, in the wings, is getting there, and that's. And I can't help but think how it's going to move up toward Hanover pretty well.
I mean, as I said to you when we communicated earlier, as somebody who retails in Lebanon all the time, I drive that Route 10 corridor far more frequently than I drive the Route 120 corridor. And I use the Route 10 corridor to get to downtown White River. I like staying off the interstate. I like the in-town driving. For me, it's just kinder and gentler than the interstate connections. But you are correct. We're more worried about the Route 10 corridor impacts in terms of the.
It's going to shoot right down your main street.
Right, and we have a downtown Main Street infrastructure that there's not a whole lot of room for widening and adding suicide lanes. No, our setbacks in downtown are all of about 5 feet from 10 feet from the edge of sidewalk. So it's not like we can just widen as Route 120 has been widened, to accommodate additional vehicles. So we're all about trying to figure out how to pull people out of their vehicles when they hit exit 13 at I-91, or quite frankly, when they hit exit 18 at I-89. How do we get people shuttling? How do we get people riding mass transit? How do we reduce our carbon footprint? I mean, an interesting factoid, Greg, which I've sort of focused on in recent years through our Sustainable Hanover Committee. We've got a member of the committee, Chris Soderquist, who's done a huge amount of data analysis as a scientist and determined that Dartmouth has a pretty heavy carbon footprint in our community in comparison with everybody else who contributes to carbon footprint in Hanover. But the same footprint is created by all of our residents and their personal vehicles. If each of our vehicle-owning residents reduced their vehicle use by 2% per year, they could get our household carbon footprint down to the level we should be at if we want to have a positive impact on climate change by 2020. 2%.
Well,
that's tiny.
That's tiny, but that's really something.
That's doable. And one of the ways to do that is to get people to be thinking more proactively about, okay, do I really need to make that trip to Lebanon on Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah.
Can I combine trips? Can I hop on AT if it's offered on the weekends?
Yeah, I think that's really a good point, because if we each as individuals made choices that And if we can, somehow I want, our website is getting better and better at Lebanon.
Yeah.
And I think that website and the successor type of presence is going to happen in the future in terms of on the information highways that we're going to have. I mean, my goodness, that if someone could pull up, because I've been trying as I'm 66 now, but I've been trying to adapt to the world's thinking now.
Yep.
And I like to pull up things, and I like to see persons kind of lay templates out to me as to what I might consider doing in certain situations.
Yeah.
So if we had templates that might say to people about how we can manage our carbon footprint or our energy consumption.
Here's your to-do list.
Here's the to-do list. Here's your options. Here's what we can do. If we make some differing choices, and if we share them with as a family,
right?
They say, like an emergency management, as a family, you should be able to plan how you're going to survive in an emergency in a 72-hour frame.
Right.
So I think we ought to have a similar framework in how we're going to utilize our resources on a regular basis. Of course, we both are very familiar and involved with things like our different associations, or my International City Manager Association types. And one of those things I think about is I heard that seminar by Jim Collins. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
and I've seen a lot of Jim Collins and stuff. I got to be in a small workshop with Jim Collins, and what I liked about him, he's trying to figure these ideas about how we could live differently, better.
Right.
And the one of the things he talked about was being more fanatically disciplined, because sometimes we seem as a society we just get so undisciplined.
Yeah. And
if we each could become more disciplined,
right,
and just really be, and I think discipline doesn't mean we're going to have I think we'll have a pleasanter life.
Right.
I think discipline, enjoyment of something, the intensity you have if you're into swimming,
right,
is great. Or if you're into art, or if you're into the theater, or if you're into music, the intensity of that feeling, that greater feeling, the intensity of life is much better if we could have this really be fanatical about the discipline we use, and that would follow into how we move around our community and what choices we make. Yeah. And we all do this together. We just we become a more disciplined culture.
Right.
Maybe we could afford to flop around and do all these undisciplined things, in another age. But this age we have, we all know how the resources are limited.
Right.
We see the impact on, from climate adaptation to the impact on our streets.
Right.
And so we just need to adopt some very disciplined patterns.
Right.
And I like the one part of it is that he uses the analogy about the race to the polls between Edmondson and Scott. and I love that one because he says, like Scott would get up and some days he'd go 52 miles and some days he'd just sit around.
Right.
And then Edmondson would get up and he would go 21 miles every day.
Right.
And then he would stop. And that's the kind of thing I think we need to do. We each need to get up and do our 21 miles. And what are those 21 miles really translate into us for our life? And then we do that every day.
Right.
I think it'll be good for us. It'll be good for our family. It'll be good for our neighborhoods. It'll be good for our communities. It'll be good for Hanover and good for Lebanon. So.
Well, and one of the things that we made a decision to do as a town 5 years ago around energy efficiency and sustainability was to set aside $50,000 in an energy fund per year, and commit to spending a maximum of $50,000 a year on a series of energy projects that the town would undertake. In other words, we're trying to walk the talk. We're not trying to invest in others' efforts. We've got to get our own sort of house in order. 50,000 in Hanover is about 2/3% on the tax rate. So we bit that off and said, look, we're going to commit to a sustained $50,000 a year investment in our buildings and our equipment, and we'll use these funds to be as energy efficient as possible. First year we used it just to perform energy audits of all the town buildings.
That's great.
We have a range of buildings from old and really tired like Town Hall to fairly new, but not LEED certified, our community center. And so, we've identified the downside is when you do your energy audits, you say, oh God, we got a lot of work to do. Our buildings needed new windows, needed insulation, needed attic insulation, you name it. It's new roofs, it's not cheap, but we've come up with a prioritized list of improvements, and we're quietly just marching along, getting those things done every year with only $50,000 to spend.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing that's, as a manager, I like to see concrete things that we can tick off our list.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you feel like you're just sort of spinning your wheels.
Just going nowhere.
And how can we lecture our citizens about what they should be doing in their own homes if we haven't done it with our own town buildings?
You
gotta walk the talk.
And we have the LEAC committee we have, which is our energy efficiency group of really some great citizens who got together, and they've done some outstanding work. And we got some help from the Regional Development Commission to help staff. We got some grant money.
Yeah.
Our planning and zoning director, Andrew Gaspray, really dedicated the ideas. So is George Murray, our solid waste manager.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do the same things. We started, we're doing the audit. We had audits come in, and then we're going to try to. We have a whole step. We adopted in the master plan a section on energy conservation.
Yep.
Energy efficiencies, and so we're trying to take that and we're trying to apply it. We even have, in the zoning amendments that are currently pending, like we're doing zoning amendments. When we have a section in there about trying to create a facility, have ability to have wind and solar around. There's these small little steps here and there.
It adds up.
That would add up. That you could be accommodating to just to doing it really on the ground, and let we're not going to lecture people. We should do what we can do. And I know we're going to try to do that.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you start to pick apart the opportunities. There are a lot of opportunities out there to sort of reduce our impact on the world we live in from a sustainability standpoint, from LED lighting in a parking garage to buying more energy efficient police cruisers to you name it. As I look at what Lebanon's tackling, we're tackling many of the same things, and I bet if we compared notes, it would be fascinating to sort of to figure out, okay, does it make sense for us to do a project like purchasing energy efficient cruisers together to save money per cruiser purchased? You name it.
Right.
There may be opportunities for us to work together that would be of benefit to the taxpayer.
It's kind of what we're always looking how we're going to live within our means.
Yep.
How can we be frugal,
right?
And meet the needs to have affordability for people that pay the property taxes here in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And I think that one of them would be the energy efficiencies that we might be able to achieve to reduce or contain the costs that keep rising on us.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important piece. I know solid waste management is an area that we both have very much interest in. And you're doing composting. You're looking at composting. You're trying to think about composting.
I mean, first of all, it's important to point out that Hanover is very dependent on Lebanon on so many levels for solid waste because you operate a regional solid waste facility. And it's a solid waste facility that's taken a leadership position on a number of levels in terms of enhancing the solid waste receiving capability of that facility. I mean, when you look at just the physical improvements to the landfill recycling facility, the weigh station, it's been great. But as an example, the wastewater sludge that we produce at our wastewater treatment plant used to be hauled to Unity, Maine. That's a 6-hour drive every week, and composted there at a facility owned by New England Organics and then sold. We said to Lebanon, who was looking for daily cover for the landfill, would you be able to compost our wastewater sludge rather than us hauling it all the way to Maine and use it as daily cover? And in fact, that's what's happened. It means it's only hauled from Hanover, Lebanon, not to Unity, Maine. Think of the carbon footprint reduction that occurs, but it saves Lebanon money, presumably to the extent it can be used as daily cover at the landfill when it's composted. Our next hope is to figure out how to get restaurants and institutions like Dartmouth to collaborate with us on food composting. Because when you look at the food waste that comes into the Lebanon landfill from Hanover restaurants and the college that isn't composted. It's 30 to 40% of the solid waste stream. If there's a way to compost food waste, collect it in an efficient fashion, compost it somewhere locally for reuse to benefit our soils, it seems to me to be a complete no-brainer. The key is finding a location for composting and making it cost-effective for individuals.
Well, I think that's really interesting, and I think I know Lebanon's the landfill is a very important capital asset for us, and a great infrastructure there. And I know, and through some of the techniques they have, they've managed to bring a longer lifespan. Now it's out to 2090 now. And that was before, when I first came, people were thinking it was much shorter, but now it's much longer. And I think we can keep on managing that well. I mean, there's some things that Lebanon has been managing. It's being used regionally. But we have to meet some of our needs. The gas is coming off there. We've got to deal with that gas, and we were on the road to doing that, and then we ran into some issues there. Because the economy is such a crazy thing. It's just a crazy thing. And people that really own businesses, like people we engage in trying to come up with these solutions to us. It's a fragile place.
It is. It's a cutting edge place, and it's fragile because it's cutting edge, and it's fragile because of the economic downturn.
So we're having a little setback there because they weren't moving forward, and we're going to be looking at what we have to do, whether we got to do it in house or whether if we can't, we got to kind of press that we need to do an issue. So every time we have an infrastructure, like a solid waste infrastructure, we also have the duty of stewardship. To be good stewards. Both of the environment, but also the financial resources. And so it's a very complicated situation. In our last couple minutes, I do want to talk about public safety. I think we should, we owe it. There's a lot of good cooperation, isn't there?
There is a lot more than our citizens might realize in terms of collaboration and cooperation that occurs between Lebanon and Hanover Police Departments and Lebanon and Hanover Fire. And also on the emergency management side, I've worked very closely with your fire chief, Chris Christopoulos, for the better part of 7 years, and Steve Allen prior to Chris on emergency response planning. They've been absolute leaders in the Upper Valley and in our region around emergency response planning, and we couldn't have done it without their guidance and coordination.
We have a good working relationship between our police and our fire departments. And there's, when there's an incident, it is so clear that there's mutual response. And the other jurisdictions as well. People come to help each other around here. And people are ready to come and deal with these situations. So sometimes be pretty difficult for our public safety officials, fire and police. And this year our police chief is retiring.
And
Jim
we're sad because we love Chief Alexander.
We had a little retirement resolution the other night for him. He well deserved. And we'll be in the process of doing that. But our intent is that Jim Alexander has been a great cooperator and a great collaborator type person, and we're gonna continue in our next police chief to continue that in a relationship we have. In our last minute or so, I'm real positive. I'm really positive because the people in our organizations are talking to one another and having conversations.
And I think 2013, it's got to be better, Greg. Between the economic improvements, it'll be interesting to see with the change in the legislature what that means in terms of local communities and the impact on local governments. I think things are going to be better in terms of a heightened degree of sensitivity to the challenges we face at the municipal level from a legislative perspective. So I'm feeling optimistic for 2013 on a number of levels.
I am too. I think there's a lot of creativity in our region in Hanover and Lebanon. It shows in the type of endeavors people are involving themselves. It shows with the level of learning that's going on in the community and the level of learned people in the community. So I think that's really important. I really think that we're preparing for the future. I think they're all we're all trying to engage in excellent planning. We're not sitting around and fighting fires. And fires in the sense of this is a Band-Aid on this, lipstick on this. We're out there in Hanover and Lebanon to try to come up with plans that will be acceptable for the community, and the community can give us the feedback that we need and the direction we need from them to say that, yeah, this is indeed where we want to go.
Yep.
So I want to wish everyone, all the residents of Hanover and Lebanon, the bestest and happiest of New Year's.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear. And this will be the honorary popping of the poppers. So
yeah, let's see if we can.
We'll see how many minutes it takes to
Don't
pop
point
these
it at
poppers.
me.
I won't want to pop it at you. Oh. You were faster than I was. Hanover was faster. Hanover won. Now you're out of hand. Now
I'm not going there.
Your poppers away. And Julia, she hogged the poppers.
But there's still 2 more left for you, Greg.
Well, I'll do this. Happy New Year again to all.
Same to you.
Thank you for
Happy
being
New
here.
Year, everybody.
Great to have us all back together again. I'll do it one more time, maybe. Oh no.
No, Paul, keep on.
Pop.